a 1 in 10 chance of living, it helped me realize just how fragile life is. And, 34 surgeries later, I was what I like to say blessed with adversity. I was the first one from my family to graduate from college, and going through that adversity, everyone's like, hey, you're meant to do big things. God saved you for a reason, as you can imagine. And then you come out and I'm $100,000 in debt, making $30K a year gross, not net. And I'm about to get fired from my first sales job. So as you can imagine, I'm not feeling great about life. And that's when I just had really that tough conversation with myself that I mentioned earlier, that you need to go for broke. Like, you were blessed with another chance. Don't waste it. Ads clearly work. I don't know how they work, but one of the things that I believe in life is to be the best, you learn from the best. And that's when I stumbled on you guys and had a conversation and made a leap of faith. You ended up finishing our first full year in business in 2024 at 1.2 million. This year we're on track for, I'd say, between 2.5 to 3 doing it. And I'm not gonna lie, like, what I learned helped me a lot to get there.
All right, today I got a special guest for you all. I've got Justin J. Johnson over here, who is a client of mine and has been making some big noise in the coaching space. So I wanted to bring him on here just to ask him some questions and kind of go from there. So, Justin, for anyone that doesn't know who you are already, would you mind giving like the 1,000 foot overview of who you are and kind of how you got to where you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I have a very interesting background. I actually almost died twice before the age of 11. And I'll explain why that's relevant in a minute, but it's important to know that story because, when I had a 1 in 10 chance of living, it helped me realize just how fragile life is. And, 34 surgeries later, I was what I like to say blessed with adversity, because now I see that experience as, January 16, 2000, when I got in my accident. That was the second best day of my life after marrying my wife. And it's fueled me a bunch, but stumbled into sales. In fact, I was terrible at it. Um, in my first year in sales, I literally made $0 in commission. And then, after a tough conversation with myself, I realized I needed to go all in on investing in myself, developing myself. So then that helped me fast forward, become number one at Salesforce in the technology space, helped scale a couple of startups. I became a CRO and was named one of the top CROs in tech at the age of 34. Um, and through that, what I realized was, success just comes down to having the right systems and frameworks. And what I found is, even big companies like a Salesforce aren't great at, developing their people and their leaders. So, you know, from my near-death experience, I knew that I loved coaching people. It was, a little bit of my superpower because it feels good helping people succeed. And when I became a CRO, that's when I decided, okay, I'm still not going to make the impact that I want being in corporate America. So that's when I decided to take a leap of faith to start Software Sales Coach, which is what I run now, where we have accelerator programs for, account executives, for leaders, founders, and both on, B2C programs as well as, B2B training and consulting engagement. So that's what I do now. That's the skinny of it.
Nice, man. And hell of a story, hell of an intro too. Do you think that was that like when you had those near death experience, was that like when you made the shift or was it a little bit after that?
Definitely after, because I mean, let's be real, I was 10 years old when the accident happened, the second near death happened. So at the time, I just want to be normal, right? And which is never going to happen. My vocal cords still don't work to this day. That's why I speak like this. And when you're younger, you just want to be normal. But when I was failing coming out of college, that's when it really hit me that I needed to make the most of this thing called life, because I was massively depressed. I was kind of seen as the golden child. I was the youngest of five boys. We grew up in a construction household, so very blue collar. And I was the first one from my family to graduate from college. And going through that adversity, everyone's like, hey, you're meant to do big things. God saved you for a reason, as you can imagine. And then you come out and I'm $100,000 in debt, making $30K a year gross, not net. And I'm about to get fired from my first sales job. So as you can imagine, I'm not feeling great about life. And that's when I just had really the tough conversation with myself that I mentioned earlier that, hey, like you need to go for broke. Like you were blessed with another chance. Don't waste it. And that's when I had the real like light bulb moment
Mhm.
to go all in. Because the reality was I was lazy. The reality was I wasn't going as hard as I needed to in order to, be successful. And I knew what failure looked like because I was experiencing it, number one. And because of where I grew up, I saw a lot of people that lived lives that I didn't want to live, candidly. So I was able to connect the dots of my failure in the moment to other people that were 20, 30 years down the line. And by connecting those dots and marrying that with my near death, that's when it all came together and it's created this fire that um, so far so good, it hasn't burned out. So yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, I can attest just from seeing it from like your traction from working with us because we've been working together for it's probably been a little over a year now or so. Is that accurate?
more than that, a year and a half.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen you just kind of take off like a rocket ship, man. And I think, there's a clear determination between, person A and person B. And when I look at you compared to some other people that come through here, it's like I said, you kind of took off like that, a rocket ship. So, for clarity on this, where did you kind of start before you were working with us? Where are you at now? And like, what do you really contribute? Because I know a lot of it kind of has to go with like your story as well. What do you think separates you from a lot of other people? Because I'm sure you've seen in this space as well, where a lot of people, the information's there, but a lot of it's implementation, and a lot of it has to do with like the stuff that you already know and your willingness to act on certain things.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of questions rolled up in one there, so I could parse that out. So when I first started working with you guys, I was a few months into my business, and I just made the decision a couple months earlier that I was going to do like a coaching model where I was trying to figure out if I want to do like just training or consulting or advising or do coaching. And I landed at, for me, coaching as like my foundation to build off of um, for the big term vision of the company, which I could chat about if you want, um, but that's where I was. I was just getting rolling, and I knew nothing about marketing and advertising or any of that. My experience is sales. I knew how to sell. I knew how to hire great salespeople, train them, build high performing sales teams, but I didn't know anything about you know how to actually drive tactical marketing in the day to day. And I definitely didn't know anything when it came to being in the services space, which is that's what you're doing in the coaching space versus I came from software and enterprise software, so it's a little bit of a different animal when you think about that. So I just didn't know anything, and I saw ads as the way to create jet fuel for my business. You mentioned rocket ship, right? Um, that's how I saw it, and because I knew, okay, long term organic is important, but that might take time to build that, and I only have so many years left on this earth because I'm always thinking about how fragile and short life is. So I saw, okay, ads clearly work. I don't know how they work, but one of the things that I believe in life is to be the best you learn from the best. And everything that you want, someone's done many times over. So it's like, all right, well, if someone's done it before, don't tell me it can't be done, right? I just didn't know how to do it. And that's when, I stumbled on you guys and had a conversation and made a leap of faith. So that's a little bit like why I joined in the first place, because it was really just, all right, I clearly just have skill gaps, but I know that, all right, if I'm gonna achieve the type of goals that I want to achieve in the timeline that I want to achieve them, I need to be aggressive. And this strategy is a strategy that I saw that could help me, and I took the leap of faith. Obviously, anytime you join a program, there's a healthy level of skepticism,
Hmm.
right? But you guys had a track record, and because of that, I said, all right, let's do it. So that's a little bit of like why I joined and kind of where I was at. Um, did you want me to go a layer deeper on that? I know you had a few other questions
No,
for me.
I think that's good. We got why you started. Where are you at right now if you want to give an update of like um you can cover numbers if you'd like. You don't have to go in all the detail, but I'm also curious of like what you really took out of it. So if you can wouldn't mind sharing any of that.
Yeah, I mean, numbers matter, right? So I'm definitely happy to share some of that. So when I first started, we were at, we were probably at like 10, 20K a month, uh, give or take. You ended up finishing our first full year in business in 2024 at 1.2 million. This year, we're on track for, I'd say, between 2.5 to 3, doing it. And I, I'm not gonna lie, like what I learned helped me a lot to get there. Um, so that's the numbers around it. Now, what I got out of it outside of just the numbers, you know, being being an entrepreneur, starting a business from scratch is very different than working in someone else's company. So a lot of what my mindset was coming into it was, all right, number one, learn ads, right? Because that was, the initial reason why I reached out. But once I got in the door, especially once I went to the first mastermind, that's when I saw, okay, I can learn a lot more than just ads. I can learn how a coaching business runs by being a part of it. And that's one of the things that I love to dig into is, all right, if my business is at 500,000 in revenue, whatever it is, a million at the time, right? It's like, all right, well, if these guys are three that 3x, 5x, 10x that, okay, if there's things that I can learn by uh, by just asking the questions, that's going to shave time off my learning curve. So the ads was definitely the tip of the spear. But since I've joined, a lot of where my energy is now, when I'm still going to the calls, I'm now an elite member. Um, it's around just like help me understand like the infrastructure of the business, the tactics. How are you guys thinking about it? You know, I see how you're running it today. What are the 5 mistakes you made to get to where you are today? Right? Because if you can help me avoid landmines, just like I help my clients, that's what I'm looking for. So it's been really productive, when I join the calls, even to this day, around just helping me just think ahead and grow the business.
Yeah. That's a really good point too, and I'm glad that you acknowledge that because granted, a lot of our front end marketing is towards marketing because that is one of the bigger issues. But we've seen like the people like yourself that excel the most, they get it, they come in for the first problem and then they start expanding, going, oh, well, there's a lot more that I can learn as far as like structure wise,
Yeah.
margin wise, where to put the money, things like that. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Um, for anyone else that's like kind of in a position where they're similar to you, because we do get a decent amount of clients that have skill sets previously that want to kind of start a coaching business. You mentioned taking the leap of faith, which I first off applaud you for, because there's a lot of noise in the market, and it seems like it's getting more noisy every single day. How did you determine like what was your kind of like your due diligence process, or how did you know like? to take the leap of faith, or was it just like, hey, I'm just going to do it?
Well, the thing that I always think about for just successful people is, action is the ultimate equalizer. And the way I evaluate things that I invest in, um, is obviously am I going to get ROI, right? That's an easy question. And then then I look at case studies, the normal stuff that people do, right? But the way I look at it is I knew that no matter what, I was going to get something out of it, even if the program wasn't good. And that might sound counterintuitive, but what I've learned through my career is, everyone in your life could either be an example or a role model, right? They could be someone that you aspire to be, or they could be an example of what not to do. So when I joined yours and when I've joined other programs, that's always something that I have going into it.
Mm.
And to be clear, you guys are the role model example. It's over delivered. But I've joined other programs, that were a massive bust. And I'm like, this is not what I signed up for at all. But I still learned example of what not to. So like that helped me just get over like the decision because I understand it's a leap of faith, right? When you're committing to that financially. But that's
Mm.
one of the things that just goes into my mind in general when I'm making decisions around investing and things like this. Um, the how you guys structure, the offer, the clear roadmap around it, that was really, really good to see. And maybe take the leap of faith with the case studies. Your guys is um I'm not sure if I said it yet, but you get the guarantee that you guys offer around the results, like help de-risk the decision for me. And the way I looked at it is, all right, when I look at like what this investment is, you know, this even if this isn't a good program, I'm going to make more than this on the back end in terms of return on investment for what I learned. So that's what made me decide to do it in the first place,
Mm.
right? And take the leap of faith. And as someone who teaches salespeople, um, I'm very direct when it comes to being on a sales call with someone who's, a closer, someone trying to sell me on something. Um, so I'm very skeptic by nature because of the skills
Mm.
that I have. But when I looked at the track record, when I looked at, all right, there's a clear method to the madness. When I dug into the details, um, it told me that like, okay, like I'm going to get something out of this, no matter
Mm.
what. I don't know how much, but this is definitely going to be worth it.
I'm really glad that you brought that up because I forget, I was talking to somebody about that the other day because I've been in programs as well too. I've had programs I've invested a lot of money into that I sit back a month later, I'm like, wow, that was definitely not worth it. But I always say the same thing that you said is like, I'm going to learn something regardless. I'm either going to learn what not to do, or I'm going to learn what to do, or I'm going to literally drag it out of them because if you do your due diligence the right way, and you know that person is ahead of you because that's really what you have to find. There's something in there you can pull out, even if they're the worst coach in the world. I've definitely had my experiences of that. But when you said that, I was like, that's exactly the same philosophy that I have because, we're in the space where skills pay the bills. The more you can acquire more skills, the more money you can make, right? So I really appreciate you saying that. I think that was right on the money. To kind of wrap things up over here, for anyone that's kind of on the fence of considering working with AIA, me and my team, what would you recommend to them?
When I look at a program, I already talked about why I joined in the first place. But what I would say is when you're thinking about working with an organization, this is something that, I train salespeople to communicate in their conversations, but it applies here. And it's not just what product do you want, what service do you want, what do you think is the best company to partner with long term? And what I would say, even though this wasn't even my mindset joining, and if someone's considering this may not be their mindset right away, but if you're planning to grow a business and or establish a business, there you want to pick the right horse that could be with you longer term. And not only did you guys deliver for me the initial promise, but I think what's more important to call out is like why I've renewed and stayed in for it is what I really pay attention to a lot is how is the company evolving? Is the company getting better? Are they improving? Is their product getting better? Because that's what I want longer term um, for the business. And so the thing that I would say if someone's thinking about this, it's not just about the initial promise, but it's also the company and you guys, the team, the product, the structure. You guys are frequently improving. Like it's pretty rapid how fast you're improving the programs and what you offer. And I just continue to reap the benefits of it. So yeah, if you're on the fence, look, ROI is going to be there. You're gonna get return on investment no matter what from doing it, and it just works, right? And I'll tell you a personal story. Um, you know, I like to keep it real with people, and I know there's a lot of people that's just like, hey, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Look, that's not how it was for me when I started. When I joined, it was I wasn't following the exact steps. So because I wasn't following the exact steps, I was getting a little frustrated, when I first joined. And as soon as, I had the conversation with, my coach, in AIA, and they're just like, look, like you're just not following the blueprint. If you're just like follow the blueprint, that's gonna work. And as soon as I kind of recalibrated and just got on the plan, then of course it worked. Shocking. So the system works. Follow it. You're gonna get the ROI, right? Just ask yourself if you're serious about trying to build a business and take control of your career. And if that's the case, then do it, right? If that's not the case, then don't do it. Those are my thoughts.
Amazing. I truly appreciate that, man. It's amazing to hear too. Now, for anybody that wants to learn a little bit more about you or find you online, where's the best place they could find you?
Yeah, my Justin J. Johnson. I'm on all the social platforms. My website is thesoftwaresalescoach.com. If someone's wants to have a conversation, but reach out. Happy to chat.
Cool. We'll plug that down in the comments down below. And also, if you guys haven't noticed, Justin J has literally the next best name in the world too. So, brother, I appreciate you hopping on this call. We'll leave everything down below, and everybody go check out Justin.